Continuing our conversation with Republican Congressman Ed Royce, you recently traveled to the border to get a better picture of border security. You introduced immigration legislation. What would it do?
Well, what my legislation would do is to try to secure that border through several steps. But one of the most important issues, only 15% of the border do we have operational control on right now. So it would give the Border Patrol greater ability to go into the areas right now that are off limits for the Border Patrol. Many times they have a hard time accessing, for example, in the national forests, and yet the cartels have sort of the run of that area down there in the southwestern border. Over 1,000 attacks on our Border Patrol officers last year. So they have certain infrastructure they want to deploy. The double border fence, they told me how successful that would be. And frankly, I'll share with you one other issue that came up down on the border, and that is they point out that we have the ability right now to have employers check the Social Security number of their employees to find out if people are coming in illegally off the border. You know, we've got 7 million people looking for jobs in manufacturing and services, and we've got 6 or 7 million people illegally employed in that sector. And so what they shared with me were a series of methods that we could deploy. One would be to have local law enforcement assist them. This is especially important when dealing with gangs. And so I've put that into legislation, which I've talked to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee about. He's supportive.
Well, two quick issues come out of this. The secure communities, which would require local law enforcement to send fingerprints for suspects to be sent into the feds to see whether or not there is an illegal immigrant or what they could be to be deported. Los Angeles has joined, at least in spirit, a growing number of communities, cities, and states that don't want to be a part of that anymore.
I think that's a big mistake. There's also the national security concern here. And if you think about Mohammed Atta and some of the 9/11 hijackers, they were caught speeding to the airport, some of the hijackers. And sure enough, if there'd been a check, if we had contacted, we would have found out that they were here illegally. They had overstayed their visa. There was fraud.
True, but they say 70% of those caught in this are minor offenses, and that it's
well, they're minor, but there's still people breaking our laws who are here illegally. And think for a minute the consequences of the fact that when they were stopped on the highway and given that ticket, that call was not made for precisely that reason. That local jurisdiction decided, well, we're not going to check in, you know, we're not going to check on somebody here who's breaking a law. Had that been done, you know, this is one of the things that the 9/11 Commission said. This should be done. It should be part of our operating procedure for national security.
So finally, are you worried?
No, you don't know when somebody breaks the law. You know, is it an economic migrant, you know, who has broken that law? Or is this a national security problem? Or is it a gang member who's here to sell drugs in the neighborhood that have broken the law? It is time to turn that over to ICE, you know, or to the, turn that over to the authorities, and they can make that decision. But if that individual is a serious felon, it's a big mistake not to be participating in this program.
So you say it's worth it, even if there are more caught that haven't done anything serious?
Well, they've done something. They have broken a law, and they're here illegally in the country. Remember that, Adrienne. That's a reality here.
Congressman Ed Royce, we are out of time.
Well, thank you.
But thank you. I hope you'll come back again.